Okay, we're live. So, hi everybody. Look, I'm lucky enough to have financial planner John Catcher here from Thriving Wealth. John, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been a little bit of time between drinks, I must admit, but we've obviously stayed connected in a lot of other ways. But
Hmm.
yeah, life's been pretty crazy on a lot of fronts.
Mm.
Very recently around, you know, doing some epic things in the business, which has been really good. Personally, for people that kind of don't know and that watching this, end of last year, I ended up getting recognised as the number one financial advisor in the country. So that was very humbling to kind of even say that, to be honest with you,
Mm.
Gianni. It's like one of those ones that it's even hard to just get out. So, life's been pretty crazy, but with three young boys under 8, um, we were talking before we jumped on, just life is like an F1 car. And
Yeah.
actually with the F1s that just passed, but it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've only got two boys and they're a little bit older, so I can imagine what 3 under 8 looks like as well. But yeah, congratulations on your achievement. That's momentous, mate. I've been, we've been keeping in touch and I've been watching from afar, but you've been going from strength to strength. So, congratulations.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be
Uh,
here.
Thank you. Look, the reason I asked you on is I've seen a bit of a theme around purchasing property inside self-managed super fund, and I wanted to clear it up for the boys and girls at home around just the whole kit and caboodle, who a self-managed super fund is appropriate for, why they should or should not consider a self-managed super fund. More importantly, if they should consider property through a self-managed super fund, because setting up a self-managed super fund in general is a very costly exercise and it's very costly ongoing as well, and it's not something that I feel people should enter into lightly. So I really, if people haven't done it already, I really encourage them to get in touch with financial planners like yourselves, professionals like yourselves, to understand the consequences. To begin with, can you tell me a little bit about self-managed super funds and
Mm.
who are good candidates for self-managed super funds in general?
Yeah, so I'll probably even start with the premise around who can actually give you advice in regards to self-managed super funds. So,
Mm.
Gianni, obviously you know this. You've got to be a licensed financial advisor to advise on the appropriateness of a self-managed super fund, because a self-managed super fund ultimately is a vehicle that is used to fund your retirement.
Mhm.
Therefore, it is governed by the SIS Act as well as other pieces of legislation. And you're right in regards to, I've been seeing an uptick of people just jumping into things like self-managed super funds. And most of the things that I'm seeing, Gianni, is in regards to I've exhausted every other way to buy a property. And therefore, I now want to even use my retirement to kind of fund that vehicle. And so, first and foremost, we need to get advice from licensed professionals. Okay. You need a really, really good support network around you. We need to understand that who it's then appropriate for is the second part. So, first, licensed advice. Obviously, advice costs money, okay, because we've got to use our expertise. You've got to have specialist accreditations in self managed super funds. You've got to be, there's a lot of hoops that you need to jump through just to even give self-managed super fund advice, which also should be an enlightenment for a lot of people thinking, why do these people need to be accredited and so up to speed with self-managed super funds? Because there's so much responsibilities and so many things that people don't look out for when it comes to the obligations of running a self-managed super fund. Therefore, if we're advising on the appropriateness of it, we need to be sure of that. Okay, so number one.
Mhm.
Number two is then around, okay, if you're looking to then see, should I use this vehicle to then purchase property, which is what we're talking about today? Well, what I first want to look at when I'm a financial advisor is look, okay, well, what's the holistic scenario of this person's situation? Not just the superannuation in isolation. In isolation, I want to see in the entirety where this sits. And the reason why that's the case is because the self-managed super fund, for all intensive purposes, or superannuation in general, is just a structure and inevitably a tax structure. Superannuation, contributions taxed at 15%, earnings at 15%. After age 60, if you're permanently retired, you can then access tax free. After 65, permanently retired, or yeah, there's some ifs and buts. I'm not going to get into it, but you can
Mm.
withdraw it completely tax free. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is a structure and it is a tax structure. Now let's talk about 15%. Okay, cool. So what about if we looked at another alternative investment structure? What would that look like? Can we set it up under a discretionary trust? Can we set it up under a company? Okay. What structure is right for you? Because, see, certain ones have different capital gains implications. Some of them don't. Okay. Some of them have some more beneficial than others don't. And so understanding your tax obligations, both from an income perspective and also from a capital gains perspective, is also very important. And then the accessibility of funds. See, I'm 36, Gianni. Okay. So if I, for example, go to put a property inside that self-managed super fund and I put my contributions in there, my employer puts the contributions in there, I can't really reap the rewards of that property until I get access to super. But you know what? I might want to retire when I'm 50. Well, what's the use of my superannuation having $2.5 million in it and I have nothing outside? I can't retire early. I've now got all my money in a bucket. And I see this. Okay. So these are some of the decision making. When do we need to access the money? Okay. What kind of contributing goals do we have? What kind of structures do we need? What's in regards to the person's unique scenario that applies this? And also understanding the property as an asset itself. Yeah. Property, it's very simple for me, but I appreciate I've been doing it for 21 years. You know, for people that don't know, I started in the industry when I was 14 and 9 months. So get me to do anything, I don't know what I'm doing. But when it comes to building wealth and financial advice, it's my bread and butter. Okay.
Mm.
So property is not a very good income generating asset. Okay. It is a very, very good total growth asset, but it's a very, very poor income generating asset. Okay. And we're going to take this into consideration of the reasons why. See, the thing is because the government knows that Australians love property, and it's one of the biggest markets, if not the biggest markets in the country. Okay, so my council wants a piece of it. My state revenue office wants a piece of it. The federal government wants a piece of it. Like everyone wants a piece of what I'm making off my property. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is that's just all the middlemen that become between you and you as the landlord and the tenant. Okay,
Mm.
so let's take into consideration other things you need to take into consideration, and then on top of that, what happens in a self-managed super fund. So then you've got rates. Sorry, you've got water connection. You've got real estate agent. Once you go through it all, and Johnny, you do these
Yeah.
feasibility studies all the time. Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's say at best, after net return is 1.5% or 1%. Let's just talk it. Okay. Now, guys, it might be a little bit better depending on properties, but I'm just going to use this as a general rule of thumb. Now, once you take debt into consideration, especially at the moment where debt levels are at, most properties in Australia are running at negative cash flows. Okay. Yes, you're getting the tax breaks, but we shouldn't be investing for tax reasons. Okay. If you're saving 30 cents to lose 70 cents, you stick with trying to not lose the 70 cents. Okay.
Yeah.
So, however, why do people invest in property? Why do I have a property? Why does Gianni have a property? Is because also what makes property special is we're able to borrow against it. Okay. Now, borrowing is a deflationary thing. Okay. Like $1 million loan right now in 20 years' time is going to be worth in today's dollars like having a $500,000 loan. But the property is a really good inflation hedge and usually keeps up and or exceeds from a growth perspective inflation. Therefore, the difference between the loan and the actual value over a 20-year time frame usually means that you'll win out in the end of the day. However, you've got to have really good cash flow. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, people, and I've had arguments with people on the internet about this, Gianni. People are like, oh, yeah, but if I do it through my self managed super fund, I've got all these contributions that are going through my employer and they can help fund it. Cool, I understand that. But what about the opportunity cost? What else could you be doing with that money? And this is what I feel like a lot of people miss out on, mate, and a lot of people that are watching and listening, they miss out on the opportunity. So I was in this kind of keyboard warrior kind of back and forth conversation about this anyway, because I did a podcast on a similar topic. Anyway, they wanted to put a $350,000 deposit, which was their superannuation balance, and then buy a have a loan of about 450,000 and then purchase a property for whatever that is, 800 grand. Okay.
Yeah.
But when he ran the maths with me, I said, you're missing the point here. You're missing what could I have done with the $350,000 if I didn't go into the property? And then with the contributions over a period of time, which one would work out better? Now, I don't know if he understood how much of a nerd I am at this stuff, but I ended up going through it all and showing like the 10-year and 20-year timeframes based on all of these things that I was speaking about today, coupled with the SMSF, which then has the accounting fees, all of the kind of legal obligations and blah, 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 the auditing fees and all of that. Putting a $350,000 deposit into a balanced, like I use the Australian balanced, normal kind of industry super balanced return, yeah, compounded over a period of time, over I think it was like 20 years, just doing normal regular contributions from the employer and the normal balanced portfolio won out.
Mm, yeah. And that's a lot of what people don't consider as well is, especially with property, is you can't compound property. Like you're not buying property every day, and you're not taking advantage of the reinvestment of the dividends and that sort of stuff. And more often than not, the self-managed super fund to purchase property is more onerous. It's more expensive as well because you've got your maintenance cost for the self-managed super fund itself. You've got the cost for the property itself, and then if you're borrowing money, to use that example, $450,000 at the moment, I think the a loan interest rate for a self-managed super fund is an extra 0.5% to 1%,
Mhm,
depending on who you're borrowing with, additional in terms of the variable rate there that you're getting.
mhm.
So it's the cost involved in purchasing a property inside the super. It's a lot more onerous, especially when you're borrowing.
Correct. And so when you take into consideration all of those opportunity costs, it becomes a very, very limited reason why I would recommend it. Now, don't get me
Mm,
wrong, we've got some clients who self-manage super funds who do have a property,
yeah.
but the property is in a diverse portfolio. It's sitting within like a 40% kind of overall asset allocation, where there's also a share portfolio, there's cash, there's the so on and so forth. So
Mm,
what I'm seeing is people chasing returns and not following risk. Yeah. So with knowing what I wanted to do from such a young age, Gianni, I majored at university at financial risk management, and I became obsessed with kind of very, very young, just connecting the dots with the most successful people at all times, okay, of all times. And I realized that all of them are risk managers. And so I can tell the difference between an amateur investor and a professional investor simply from if they talk risk first or if they talk returns first. And in
mm,
that argument with that keyboard warrior, first thing that comes up, boom,
return.
if I made 7% returns. And so for people that are watching and listening to this, and I show that I talk straight, but Gianni doesn't have me on for no reason. It's because if you're making your decisions based on the return and not focusing on the risks, you're setting yourself up for disaster. And so for me, when I look at property, we need to be aware of the risks. We've got diversification risk. It's a big, lumpy asset. Okay, when it comes to your retirement, you can't sell a bathroom to fund your retirement. You've got to sell the whole thing. So therefore, you've also got timing risk. So not only do you have it all in one lump sum, you've got a timing issue in regards to it. Also, it's got all of the other risks that are associated with normal economic assets as well too. That things go up and down and left and right. Did you buy the right property? Obviously, we use people like Gianni and we use lawyers and we for specialties on understanding taking out the risk from the purchase because like Gianni, when it comes to property, they're making data driven decisions. They're not focusing on this paid 25% last year and therefore I'm going to jump into it. That's like making your investment decisions like driving and looking in the revision mirror. We can't do that. We've got to focus on risk. And so when you look at an SMSF inside a property, you've got to also look at the opportunity cost. You've got to look, what else could I be doing? Yeah. And if you're making a decision because I need to get in the market because everyone else is getting in the market, I can tell you that is setting yourself up for disaster. And so you hear my passion about this, Gianni, is because probably for the last 6 months, I've closed down more self-managed super funds that I've set up. And I have seen people, we're working with a client at the moment who's bought property, a self-managed super fund property through, done that. They've got silver, they've got gold, they've got crypto. And we had to deliver the sad news in regards to everything you just did set you back about 5 years on your plan to retire. And it's very sad when I'm the person, like imagine the doctor telling someone that they've got cancer, I'm telling someone that you stuffed up, and I know you want to be financially free and I know you want to do all of these things, but reality, the decisions you made are pushing you backwards. And people might say, John, how is that possible with those three assets? Well, her gold and silver, they don't produce any income.
Yeah. They're
Therefore,
not
the
income
only
producing
ability,
assets.
they're not none of them are income producing assets. And even the property that she's got is actually not a producing asset because it's actually in a negative outcome. And it's also speculating because I said to her, how are you going to retire? She's like, when I retire and the property's gone up by X, then I'll sell it.
Yeah.
That's a hope strategy. Yeah.
Mm.
And especially when the time frames weren't too far off where she kind of wanted to be from retirement, the shorter the investment time frame, the more heightened risk it was to happen. So now we kind of need to scrap everything, fix what we need to do. And I just wish that she came and understood the opportunities of what else is obviously out there as well too.
Yeah. Yeah, because none of those assets are income producing assets, and especially if your property is in deficit, then you need to be funding that purchase from anywhere. And then, like you said, it's unless you're making data driven decisions where you're looking at forecasted growth and leading indicators and all that sort of stuff, you don't know what the property is going to be worth in 10, 20 years time.
Yeah.
So that being said, I feel you made a good point previously where the difference between a rich person and a poor person is a rich person just aims to keep their money. They want to
Hmm.
keep their money more and more of the
Hmm.
time. How do I keep my money? How do I keep my money?
Hmm.
Whereas a lot of people chase the growth, and I've seen it heaps lately as well,
Hmm.
especially news headlines around Perth, or a lot of some buyers agents haven't even been advertising the fact that you can buy property through self-managed super fund,
Hmm.
and I just think that people need to be educated before they make such an onerous step like that.
Well, there's also a conflict of interest, and also it's illegal. Yeah.
Mm,
So I'm going to talk straight, just for everyone to know. As of 2020, which I retired from the role, I was the national practitioner chairman of the Association of Financial Advisors, and so,
mm,
I spoke to different bodies in regards to calling out these people because,
mhm.
I'm one string of my bow is I'm a qualified mortgage broker, but if I was just say a mortgage broker on my own and I came out and I started saying, hey, listen, I should think you should buy property. If you're aged between 30 and 40 and your income is this and you should buy property. Well, it could be perceived as personal advice, everyone, which that is a very, very serious crime if you're not licensed to be able to do so, and can be as bad as jail time in regards to that stuff. And how personal advice is determined is, has the individual taken one personal aspect of your life and applied it to a particular strategy? And therefore, did that affect that person, number one? And then two, did the person who received that information perceive for the information to be considered as personal advice? So it doesn't even need to be advice. Even if it's perceived as advice, it can be then considered as. Okay. So every time I go onto YouTube, every time I go onto these social media platforms, it's the next person out there. Property boom, about to happen, or property crash going to happen. This is your last time to buy. If you're aged between blah 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 blah, scares the living daylights out of me, Gianni.
Mm.
Okay, because the reality is there's reasons why we have these protections, everyone. And the reason why we have those protections is because it's not a one size fits all for everyone. I've been in the finance game for 20 odd years, and I can tell you that each and every single person's plan is completely different because everyone has different goals, everyone has different timeframes, everyone has different risk appetites, everyone's honestly completely different.
Yeah.
And so if we can just say, hey, listen, everyone puts themselves in X and it's going to make you a mozza, what are you what are
Yeah.
you doing? Yeah.
Especially the people that only consider 4 or 5 locations to purchase property, and they're all at the same price point, and they just buy whatever within that price point or that location. It's they haven't really considered their financial situation and how it affects them. Yeah.
And when you're talking about that, mate, obviously we're talking about one of the other risk measures, which is around concentration risk. Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is why we're talking about, like, and I don't talk much like this publicly, everyone, but I did want to have this conversation with Gianni, and Gianni wanted to have it with me. But like, you look at all of these risks that I'm talking about, Gianni.
Hmm. Yeah.
No one
Yes.
goes and does like a risk assessment and does like a SWOT analysis on that. They don't do it. They just go and, hey, mate, I met a guy at the pub. He reckons he's making a mozza on this.
Yeah.
I spoke to my accountant. He reckons he can set up this SMSF, or I've gone to this online company. This lady, without what I'm talking about, the company that did it, I don't even know how they're still operating, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. And these people have been reported, to be honest with you. And obviously, that's out of my hands at the moment. But
Hmm.
the person's situation is so detrimental, and it was a property spruiker. So you'll tell the difference in property spruikers. Let's be honest. Yeah, they're more
Hmm.
like sales orientated. They've got like a system to kind of create wealth, not personalized and tailored. Yeah. So a few
Hmm.
things, but also there's like this chain of people. Yeah, you'll see like it's the buyer's agent who's linked up to say the property developer's in bed with the mortgage broker or the lender, then the lender's in bed with the accountant and the financial planner, and then there's this kind of conglomerate, yeah,
Hmm.
of conflicted interests, and the person at the end is getting screwed. Yeah.
Hmm.
In this case, that's what it was. Yeah. But if you find yourself, the viewers and listeners, kind of getting this kind of sniff, yeah, think who's really making the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's in whose best interest is it? 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good. John, if anybody has any questions around if self-managed super funds are appropriate for them or how they could consider using the superannuation a little bit better, how is the best way to get in touch with anybody from your team?
Yeah, I think the best is first and foremost before you even reach out to someone like me or to someone like my team, okay, which
Mm,
they can do, just jump onto my website, Thriving Well, follow the prompts, and you can
mm,
organize an intro chat. But I think the biggest thing is I want everyone to have this kind of open mind. Okay, when you go to see a licensed financial advisor, don't come into it saying this is what I want. Okay, it's like walking into your doctor and saying I want chemotherapy. Doctor's going to say, "Hey, whoa, what are you talking about? I want chemo. You want chemotherapy? We haven't even done the
yeah.
X-rays. We haven't even done this. We haven't even done this. We don't even know what your diagnosis yet. Why are you going straight to chemo? Yeah. Oh, because
Hmm.
my mate did chemo and he's now fine. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't even know if you got cancer yet. So when you come to speak to someone like us, yeah, I want you to have an open mind. And the open mindedness needs to be what's the big picture? What are you
Yeah.
doing all of this for? Yeah, what's the purpose in why you're waking up every day, slaving away to do what you need to do? Where do you want to be? Yeah.
Hmm.
And in most cases, when they do open up, it's I want to stop feeling stuck, or I've got so many different options. Yeah. And ultimately, I want to be in the position where I'm debt free on the house I live in and I want passive income that exceeds my lifestyle requirements. Cool. Stop there. Just 1 second. All right, cool. Now, from there, that's the summit. Now, let's work out from the summit to now all the steps we need to take and all the things you want along the journey. Okay. And then we'll figure out what treatment we need to apply to the diagnosis. Okay. So, for everyone who wants to reach out, you can jump onto our website. Make sure you follow me as well too on LinkedIn and on Instagram as well too. Just search up my name. I think on Instagram it's just the John Casher, but on LinkedIn you should just be able to kind of search John Casher. And if the marketing team's doing anything well, you'll see me on there. But the reality is I like people to follow me on social media and also jump onto my podcast, which is Cash Talk as well too,
Hmm.
because you should only be speaking to a organization when you've got to understand them and know who they are. And so once you've got it, the understanding of to know who we are and what we're about and who we work with and the authentic approach that Thriving Wealth is known about and why we get results, then once you've got the open mindedness, then reach out and we go from there. But for me, if today has been one thing for me, Gianni, it's to just make sure that it's opened up the minds of people about possibilities elsewhere and to understand the risks before you jump into a serious decision like using all of your retirement to bank it on one asset.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And first and foremost, people need to begin with the end in mind. So if you don't understand how, like, it's easy to get into property. It's really easy to buy a property, to be completely frank,
Mm.
but the difficulty is getting out of it. And a lot of people don't think of how I'm going to get out of a property. And it's even harder to get out of property inside a self-managed super fund. So that being said, people need to begin their journey with the end in mind. And what is the goal of investing in property as well? So look,
Yeah.
there's been a few instances where I've actually talked people out of investing in property just because it's too detrimental for their situation. I didn't want that on my hands. I didn't
Hmm.
want them to be, a year or two down the track and sort of think, I can't afford this asset anymore. I got to let go, and then be in a worse situation.
And you know what, Gianni? I wish we didn't have to have these conversations,
Mm,
because you know what? Property is a really good asset when it's used properly.
yeah.
And when the wealthy know how to use the property asset well, they make a ton of money.
Mm,
But the problem is 9 out of 10 are being persuaded by the wrong people, or they're doing their own research and making bad decisions. And because it's so easy to get in, as you know, then when you're handcuffed.
yeah.
So with that said, keep open-mindedness, get a professional team around you, and take your finances seriously, because it can either make or break your financial future.
Yeah. 100%. Thanks again so much. I'll leave John's details in the comments for everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to John, a member of his team, or myself if you have any questions. Thanks
Cheers.
again, man.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gianni.